Hello, welcome back to the channel, and thank you all for 60,000 subscribers. I know that I've been gone for a long time, and I do appreciate that some of you checked in on me to see if I was still alive. Basically, I lost someone who was close to me, and I didn't want to go disappearing from home for days at a time. Things are now getting back to normal though. Enough sub-story. Today we've got something a bit different in store for you. Since I've been gone, I do feel like the genre has become a bit oversaturated with low effort content, so I wanted to do something different to push myself and learn. The Turdtowns series will be back next month, but today it's a special Welsh Valleys challenge. The challenge I set for myself is it possible to drive around the entire South Wales Valleys in a day? At the same time, trying to avoid any major roads and using the same road more than once. Now this might sound easy on paper, but let me tell you, it wasn't. Plus, we've got the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit to contend with, which Wales may actually be getting rid of now. Wish that had happened sooner, it would have made my challenge a whole lot easier. The South Wales Valleys are a collection of linked valleys spanning from north of Newport to north of Swansea. I am fascinated with this place because it's beautiful hills and wildlife filled with run-down towns and villages. I called them the urinals of Wales, but as it turns out, there are some genuinely great places in the valleys if you know where to look. So join me on this driving challenge as I try to complete the South Wales Valleys in a day. And you never know, we might learn a thing or two along the way. This first valley is the Sirhowy Valley. It's quite simple at the start. First part of this trip, it's a case of just going up and down, up and down. But then it gets a bit more complicated in the middle. And then we have a nice easy finish where we go back to going up and down. The middle is complicated, and I hope it goes okay. So here we are on the outskirts of Pontypool. We've got some of the miserable signs of the Welsh Valleys. This is the outskirts. Things seem to be shabby in most towns on the outskirts, don't they? The Sirhowy Valley starts out at the town of Pontypool, an up-and-coming town with a population of 29,000. This valley grew up around mining coal and iron, which you're probably going to be sick of hearing by the end of this video. A river here with the same namesake, which in Welsh means Grey River, runs through the valley, but may have to change its name as recently it changed its colour. It's now kind of similar to the women in Wales. No, it wasn't the countless tanning shops that changed them, it was too much bathing in the polluted river. The thing I'm going to have to keep reminding myself today is that the speed limit is 20 miles an hour in much of Wales. That's going to be something I'm going to have to adjust to. Not in this valley though, so that's a plus for Afan Valley. Brynmawr is the only other major settlement in this valley, but it's just a small town with a population of 5,600. In the Victorian times, this place was 4 times bigger due to all the mine work in the area. It also used to boast its own train line to Newport, but that closed in the 60s. Nowadays, Brynmawr is focused on tourism with the Big Pit Museum, which sees an average of 100,000 visitors each year, a 2-mile steam train, and it is a World Heritage Site. This means that it is deemed of outstanding value to humanity. Guess they didn't visit the actual town then. The only thing that has value is the happiness you experience when you leave here. The place itself might not be the prettiest of places, but the valley's pretty. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot in this valley. Just a couple of places. It's obviously most famous for the Big Pit, which, although I said in my video when I came here last time that it was a closed down mine, it is a closed down mine, but it's now a tourist attraction, which is good. I'd like to see the valleys do more of this sort of thing and embrace tourism because it's a very pretty place. They could be a real outdoor powerhouse when it comes to that sort of tourism, and I'm told by a lot of my viewers that we are actually going that way, which is good. Yeah, this is more of the Brynmawr that I came to expect. Derelict buildings everywhere and a steep hill. Yeah, here we go. So here's some of the Brynmawr in former industry here. In these former mining communities, they have what I believe to be stacks from all the digging over the years piled up around them. This clearly shows off the area's past history. But what future history do places like Brynmawr have? And more importantly, what future do places like Brynmawr have? Because that's where we're off to next, and that seems even more of a desperate place to me. I remember last time I was in Brynmawr, I laughed at what I called the ugliest structure of all time. This giant shed-like thing. It's something left over from their past, which they're unable to remove because it's listed. But just look at that. It's not one of the most pleasant things you'll ever see. I decided to take a quick drive around Brynmawr just to see if anything had changed from the last visit. From what I remember, the only highlight of the place was a cinema where people queued around the block when they showed their films from 10 years ago. But it really does look like much of the same problems exist here in Brynmawr. They have, of course, got the new Head to the Valleys road here, which should provide some uplift to the town with the better transport links and more money coming into the area. Let's take a little trip up the old high street to see how that's coping nowadays. Yeah, this is depressing. This is one of the worst high streets I've ever seen. I know a lot of it looks boarded up, it's still quite early in the morning so all the shops won't have opened, but there are noticeably derelict buildings here. I think the main problem with high streets like this is there's just not many shops that someone would come and visit for. Just a simple Google will reveal all the shops that closed down on the street just this year. It's depressing. These are tough economic times, and an uninviting street like this just isn't going to see footfall it needs for the shops to survive. Oh, this is all still closed off from last time as well. This was all derelict, this site from last time. I think it was about a year and a half ago I was here as well, so it's a shame that nothing's been changed with that one. There's no station either for this town of 5,600, but despite that, it is listed as being in the top 100 places in Wales that you need to see before you die. Yet it's barely distinguishable from most of the other places in the valleys. Maybe they labelled this as a way to make the afterlife seem more welcoming. We're now moving into the Ebbw Valley, and I am slightly concerned because we started late. We're about an hour late on schedule. So this is Valley 2 and it's already 7:45. So I am slightly concerned we're not going to accomplish our mission today. Panic was already setting in on me for only our second valley, as it was bin day and there was just no getting around it. Wow, how is this not a one-way street in Antiglo? This is ridiculous. One of my mission objectives on this trip was to actually visit the towns and villages and not just bypass them all, which certainly makes this more of a challenge. Nantaglo was a real test of my sanity. I don't see how you could ever have 2 lanes passing through here when you've got all these parked cars on the side. I've been stuck here for 5 minutes already. This is not going well. It's yet another place that used to be massive in industry, with iron and coal work employing around 3,500 people at the time. And these are not big towns and villages, so you can just imagine how many people were put out of work when the industry closed down. Yeah, I don't recommend Nantaglo on bin day. That took forever to get through there. That place needs a one-way system badly. The scenery in the Gilfach Valley is just stunning. But then you've got all these horrible houses plastered to the hillside. It's a very strange contrast. Okay, that was a random dead end. More time wasted. This valley seems to be a lot more pronounced than the last valley, with very steep hills on each side. What a place. What a place to be born and bred. According to a lot of people who live in this valley, most of the towns and villages were desolated with the building of the new A road, which essentially bypassed all the high streets here. So you can quite easily come down this valley and not visit any of these towns. We're now in Abertillery, which is one of the cheapest places in Wales you can buy a house. It made the Turdtowns list last time. The high street is one of the worst places I'd ever seen, and the whole place just felt a bit sad. Be interesting to see if much has changed here. It hadn't. It was the same old bleak place. Except you're reminded by how grand it probably used to be due to the extensive high street. There's actually 4 of them, and grand crumbling buildings. It once boasted a peak population of 40,000. Nowadays it's closer to 10,000. All of their industry is gone too. I did find this nice area on top of the hill above Abertillery, which is officially the nicest thing I've said about it. These 20 miles per hour speed limits are already starting to make me angry. It's so hard to keep to a speed limit you're not used to. Just down the road at 6 Bells, it was the site of an underground mining explosion which killed 45 miners. This valley feels like a place the people in power have forgotten about. Here at Ebbw, we encounter our first difficulty as 2 valleys merge into one, and I've opted to go down south first and come back for the rest of it. Crumlin was a place which possibly had the toughest time in the 60s. Its canal was filled in, and a road was slammed on top of it, dividing communities in half by a 4-lane carriageway. Its railway stations and huge viaducts were taken away, and its gigantic colliery shut its doors. Another 500 people were out of work. If I had to say a positive about Crumlin, it would have to be that it's the home of pot noodles. Actually, I take it back. It causes the whole place to stink of eggs. This is a miserable hellhole. I wasn't too impressed with old Crumlin. The whole place looked like it was crumbling. Now I have to admit, Rhondda, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is probably the first nice place I've visited. It has decent shops, decent transport infrastructure and plenty of green spaces. Situated at the bottom of the Gilfach Valley is Rhondda, and I must admit I quite like Rhondda. It has plenty of transport infrastructure, plenty of shops, it wasn't too run down, and there was green spaces everywhere. I can't hate on this place, I wouldn't mind living here. Rhondda would be my first pick as a place to live. It's in the valleys without being in the middle of nowhere, so you get the outdoors and the beauty without any of the isolation or depression. It's got 2 trains an hour into Newport and Cardiff. The M5 motorway is just a short drive away. A park runs the length of the high street and it's got Lidl, Aldi and Tesco, along with a high street which seems to be faring a bit better than the other places I visited in the valleys. And most importantly, the place is not ugly. The only downside is the house price of $190,000, and that's because you can commute from here. Now at this point in our mission, things got really confusing, as we had to kind of double back to get to the Ebbw Valley. I'm doing my best to try and only use a road once, but sometimes it's just not possible. So it's time for us to drive back up the Gilfach Valley until we get to the Ebbw Valley. And at that point we can say "fuck off" to that valley. So we're now in the Ebbw Valley, and the first place you encounter is a place called Quim, which I'm probably not pronouncing properly. But amusingly, in Welsh, Quim translates to valley. So this town is a valley. It's confusing, I know. Locals like to call this place the Valley. It's another one of those places with cars parked on either side of the road, and you're never quite sure if you can fit 2 cars past at the same time in the middle of the road. So it's best just not to try. I can sense a storm coming. Please, for the love of God, don't rain. Coombe is small and cramped into a grid-like structure with only one shop and not a lot else. The railway passes straight through it but can't be bothered to stop. It's another one of those places which was split in half by the A4046. My advice would be to keep on going down that road and don't look back. There wasn't really anything too exciting in the Ebbw Valley. Didn't particularly rate it, and I'm not going to rate it based on Ebbw Vale for God's sake. Now this area here of modern buildings is the site of the old iron and steelworks in Ebbw Vale, and this area used to be absolutely massive. Reportedly during World War II it employed 14,500, which is mad. When all this closed, you could just imagine how difficult it must have been living here at the time. Steel from here was used to construct Sydney Bridge. I wonder what the ugly shopping centre which looks like a failed spaceship is made out of. And I can report, following on from the last video, still can't find the elusive Ebbw Vale hotties. On to our next valley. So we're now coming on to our 4th valley, which is the Sirhowy. Let me just pull over and figure this out, I have no idea. Sirhowy. Yeah, almost right, it's Sirhowy. The Sirhowy Valley starts out at Tredegar, and most of it is pretty empty, but halfway down you reach Blackwood, which was pretty big with a population of 12,000. But it's an otherwise unremarkable place sandwiched between 2 valleys. I've almost completed the Sirhowy Valley. It was a real mixed bag. The top half was quaint and small, the bottom half quaint, small. The middle is just a massive built up area, and it wasn't so nice. So it's quite hard to judge this valley. I guess it's average because some parts were nice, some parts not so nice. I'm starting to think a little bit more about the time now. It's 10:30. I'm not sure if that means I'm doing good or not, because I've never done this before. It's a whole new thing for me. It's another place which lost its railway, but at least it's been turned into a country park. And then you follow the valley down and you're back outside Rhondda again. And now we're off to Caerphilly to pick up our next valley. We've got the complicated part to come as well. Not looking forward to that. And then after the complicated part, we've got the nice part where the scenery should be stunning. But stay tuned because the next valley is one that I've been dreading. So here we are, a place I wished I never had to come back to, the Rhymney Valley. On the plus side, there's quite a few different towns and villages in this valley. So we'll see if Rhymney's the worst place in the valley, or if they're all bad. I've just hit my first major mistake of the video and I've gone the wrong way. Now I'm sent down a dual carriageway and it's been a couple of miles now and there doesn't seem to be a chance to turn around. This is valuable time it's costing me. I'm starting to doubt my abilities to get this one done. If there was a sign saying this way to Rhymney, I would have probably taken it, but no one wants to advertise where Rhymney is because no one with a right mind would ever want to go there. First place I went through, Llanbrwdach, admittedly seemed okay to be honest. It was very clean, tidy, had a bit of character. Hope that's a sign of things to come for the Rhymney Valley. It might not all be bad. The Strad seems quite nice as well. Not many boarded up shops, there was flowers everywhere. This is a bit of a turn up for the books. Garw next. Yeah, this doesn't seem quite as nice here. Maybe I'm just in a bad part of town, but it just doesn't look as good as the other places I've been so far. Those houses got tin roofs, holy fuck. Here we go, take a look at this then. Corrugated iron roofs on fairly modern houses. Why? I decided I better leave the tin houses of Garw in the past and get on with it, because I'm getting behind on schedule and I am really panicking about making this trip now. No time for courtesy. Just finally hit a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit and it feels like heaven after the last half hour. I bet this won't last long. Might as well count it down. Oh look, what a surprise, it's 30 again. The signs at Bargoed advertise a town centre. You follow the signs and it's just a car park for the biggest Morrisons I've ever seen built on the edge of a cliff. What a strange place. It's time for my second Red Bull, a southern fried wrap and an egg. I've been awake since 4. It's been a long journey. I wouldn't normally drink so much Red Bull, but I don't really feel like I have a choice today. Yeah, that didn't go so well. Luckily I bought a change of top, which is the most intelligent thing I've done today. Now we're in New Tredegar. There are actually 2 Tredegars in this area. There's another one in the Sirhowy Valley where we've just come from. Now you might be wondering, why is it called New? Well, the old one was so bad that they burnt it down and built this new one, which isn't much better. No, there is actually a proper story behind it. Basically, a mining family owned an estate called Tredegar near Newport. They then set up their mine in the Sirhowy Valley, and the miners who worked in there formed this new community called New Tredegar in the next valley, which when you think about it makes it New Tredegar. It's a lot to get your head around, let alone pronounce. I had a deep sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach as I entered Rhymney for the second time in my life. And appropriately, this is where the rain started to get heavier, just to add to the depressing nature of the place. Now, I was intrigued coming to Rhymney because of the amount of boarded up houses I saw last time. It just seemed a bit of a shock to the system. I didn't understand why so many houses were like that in Rhymney. So we'll find out if that's still the case. Why build a big house like that and then have a scrapyard next to it? This place is so depressing. The boarded up houses have started. Burnt out waste ground still there. They're not going to have built on that, are they? Let's be real here. Now these houses over here were boarded up last time from what I remember. The burnt up church is still there, but no, the boarded up houses on that side seem to have gone. What about down there? Oh, well that's a pleasant surprise. The bungalows don't seem to be boarded up now either. That looks a lot better. Here's Rhymney High Street, the world's ugliest library. Still open though. No, this high street is still terrible. There's no shops and the ones that are here are boarded up. Now this house here is still boarded up. And that is an absolute eyesore from the last time I was here. I'm surprised that the council haven't been able to do anything with that one, considering how many homeless people we have in this country. It's an embarrassment. But then I don't know who owns it. It could have been bought off the council by some landlord who's then done a runner and they can't track him down. Things aren't always simple. Well, it's still really depressing here, but it does seem to have improved a little bit. Much less boarded up buildings. Big improvement. I still wouldn't want to live here because look at it. But we may find somewhere worse on today's travels, who knows? The roads in and around Rhymney are some of the worst that I've ever seen. It's really starting to shake my bones to pieces here. A dead end, for God's sake. We don't have time for dead ends. Ironic for Rhymney. So what did I think of the Rhymney Valley in the end? It's clearly the least picturesque out of all the valleys I've visited so far. For half the valley you don't even really realise you're in a valley. It does get more dramatic when you get to New Tredegar, but I can't disregard the fact that the towns and villages inside this valley are not the best places to be. Now, that is not me necessarily saying this is the worst valley in Wales. We've still got plenty more valleys to go through today. Wow, for the first time on this trip I am taken back and amazed by the scenery. Hello. Hello. It is insane up here on the hillside between the two valleys. If you love sheep, this appears to be the place for you. So this is the part of the trip that I was looking forward to the most, because I've heard a lot about the Darran Valley. I don't know which one it's actually called, but it's often missed off of lists. It's better be really good. The Darran Valley is only just above 4.5 miles long, and it has a very low population of 2,500 and features the town of Derry, which in Welsh means oak trees. Yep, trees is correct. There's certainly a lot of them in this valley. It's picturesque and quiet, but there were far more dramatic to come. There were very small mines here, but mostly the area hasn't been developed too much. I wouldn't mind a house here at an average of only 123,000. It's tempting, but can you really justify living this near to Rhymney? So that's the Darran Valley completed in only about 10 minutes. It's the shortest valley on this list. What did I think of it? Well, Derry itself was lovely. I wouldn't mind living there. It felt a bit isolated though, and it didn't seem like there was that much to do. But if you love the great outdoors, it would be a perfect place for you, and it looked nice. No complaints about it. Next up, we got the Taff Valley, which will see us heading back down to Caerphilly again. I'm starting to really tire, and this is where the route starts to get confusing. Just made yet another wrong turn. I thought it was down this road. But no, I have to make a wrong turn when I'm on a bloody cliff edge, don't I? I'm meant to be on that road down there. So back I go again. We're going to be okay though. So we start this valley out in Bedlinog, which is honestly one of the hilliest places I've ever been. And the streets are really tight, but it is a beautiful place. It's just very strangely located, extremely isolated. It's a dead end as well, basically, so you don't come here unless you need to. But it is a really nice place. I mean, based on the scenery alone, you'd want to live here. But not for me, not a fan of all these hills. I don't know if it's my tiredness kicking in, but I keep making mistakes. I've just gone down this one-way street on the edge of a cliff again, and now I'm having to reverse all the way back out. And it absolutely is pissing me off. Well, if I die, at least there'll be video evidence of it. I did not die in vain. I died making Turdtowns videos. That was so unpleasant. It's becoming less about the mission and more about survival at this rate. What I will say is, despite my weariness, it makes life so much easier not having to drive in big towns when you're tired. That is exhausting. I reached the outskirts of Treharris, and as it turned out, this is a town which I would be seeing a bit of today, as multiple routes crisscross through the place. Can't avoid it, I'm afraid. It was at this point that the route got really confusing, with valleys crisscrossing amongst each other and going in circles. I had to stop to figure out what the most sensible route to do was. Yeah, I'm old school, I'm using a map. Don't like it, I don't care. I eventually decided the best option was to go up to Merthyr and double back. I can't see a more sensible option, but if you can see one, make sure you let me know down in the comments. Hopefully you can see the graphic I've done of the routes I'm trying to accomplish today. Edwardsville, where I am right now, was the site of the worst British tornado. It caused widespread damage in the valley. It injured hundreds and killed 3 people. That was back in the early 1900s, so hopefully nothing like that ever happens again around here. And on that unhappy note, we're off to Merthyr Tydfil. I didn't think too much of this valley. The top part was nice, the rest of it not so much. After a brief stop off at McDonald's, which I was feeling guilty about due to the amount of time I was wasting, it was time to do the Taff Valley, starting at Merthyr Tydfil. I've been to Merthyr a fair few times, and I don't hate the place. I think it gets a slightly unfair rep at times. I left Merthyr because you've all heard enough about that place to last a lifetime, and I headed down the Merthyr Valley, trying to avoid the A470, which bypasses all the towns and villages. They really don't make it easy accessing these places, and they love their speed cameras around here. This was probably the least fun I had driving on the entire trip. It just goes on and on. It was ridiculous. Without a speed limiter, you're bound to slip up at some point after driving 20 for 20 minutes. The first notable place to pop up after Merthyr is Afan, which some of you may be familiar with, as it was the site of a terrible disaster in the 60s. Mining had taken place in this area for years, especially in the hills above Afan, until one day there was a landslide and it all piled down the hill, and unfortunately most of it hit a kids' school. The landslide killed 116 children and 28 adults. It's the most famous mining disaster in British history. Watchers of The Crown are probably familiar with this place, as the disaster featured on an entire episode. The royal family actually visited here just after the disaster had happened. On the drone you can clearly see the areas affected by the landslip. The playground area at the bottom of the video was where the kids' school once stood, and opposite is a green space where the terraced housing comes to an abrupt end. Yep, there were more houses here swallowed by the landslip. As this was only the 60s, you have to imagine that there are many people still living here who were directly affected by the disaster. The white graves at the cemetery are for the people lost in the disaster. I'd wasted way too long in Afan and had to leave, and in my rush I once again headed down a dead-end road. And reversing all the way out here was a real test of my driving ability with parked cars closely on each side. I swear Wales isn't very good at putting up dead-end road signs. I'm in desperate need of making some progress here, but this road going through the Taff Valley is the slowest road ever. 20 miles an hour all the way down, speed cameras every 20 seconds. Is it really necessary? Why is this road so heavily enforced? Starting to get nervous now. It's 4 PM, not sure we're going to make it. The plan is we're going to follow the Taff Valley down to Llanistrant, and then we are going to move on to the next valley. And I hope to God we can pick the pace up a bit here, because this one has been a ball ache. This is ridiculous. This roadworks have gone on for half an hour and there's not even anyone doing any road work. The traffic was appalling as we reached Pontypridd. It took me almost 10 minutes to get around just one roundabout. And this happened twice, which is why the footage you're seeing now is of a much nicer day. Every time I've been here, it's been an unbearable driving experience. That aside, it is a nice town of 31,000. They have invested in infrastructure here and the River Taff is pretty large at this point. We continue following the valley down to the outskirts of Cardiff where the Taff Valley ends. The Taff Valley cost me valuable time, and on reflection my time here caused me future problems. It's a shame the weather's so appalling because the Taff Valley does have some pretty nice scenery. Shame about the towns and villages within it. It's not going to rank that highly. I forgot just how bad the traffic is when the schools kick out in the valleys. God. Okay, so now it's another short valley as we go from Llanistrant to Sirhowy Valley. I'm sorry, I don't have the time to get these pronunciations right. I'd have to Google the pronunciation. I've got about 3 hours left on the clock. There is no time to waste at this point. So as far as I'm concerned, if anyone who is watching called Tony, you're a fail. But this valley is called the Ely Valley or the Ely Valley. I'll correct it in post-production, who knows. Okay, we finally made it to Sirhowy Valley. Sure looks like a fail. Yeah, I don't think the Ely Valley is that special really. Doesn't seem to have much scenery to it. Maybe there is. Time is short. Why is driving in Wales so displeasurable? This should be fun, but instead you speed up to 60, 10 seconds later back to 20, there's 50 speed cameras, everybody's driving slow. This is horrendous driving around here. No fun at all. And to make matters worse, it's now 20 past 5. I'm convinced I'm not going to accomplish this challenge. So I just checked my map, and without even knowing it, I just completed a valley, the Ogmore Fach Valley. Yeah, I'm not going to make that joke again, but it can certainly do something. Ends it off. So you might be wondering at this point what the plan is. It doesn't look like I'm going to make it. So what I think I'm going to do is double back up the Ogmore Fach Valley and hopefully get the Rhondda Valley done before sunset. And that's a decent way to finish because the Rhondda Valley is probably the most famous of the valleys. Just because it's fun to say in a Welsh accent. Come on, you've all done it once, let's be honest, fess up. Come on, we need speed! Give me speed! Oh no, it's a 30. Gilfach Goch is an interesting place, which seems to be set with a mountain towering over it. I am so sorry about the weather, guys. I promise I'll splice in some drone shots that I'll take tomorrow. Fingers crossed the weather gets better and we can do that. I don't know if it's the weather at this point or if it's just horrible here. That corrugated shed thing looks disgusting, whatever that is. But Gilfach Goch. Yeah, I mean, the name's horrible, so does that make the place horrible? Gilfach Goch is a large village with a population of 3,340, and it's in its own valley, the small Ogmore Valley. The translation is basically small secluded area. Sounds more like someone spitting up phlegm. It's another dead-end valley, which you would never visit unless you had to. This area recorded the highest number of residents with no religion in the UK. I'm trying to get a good look at this place because I know I'm not going to make it. I'd love to try and make it, but it seems extremely doubtful at this point. What the hell is that? Oh, Evanstown Community Centre. Evanstown Community Centre, hang your head in shame. That is the ugliest building I've seen in a while. It really is the same old story here, isn't it? Beautiful scenery surrounded by crumbling, disgusting, closed down buildings everywhere. It should be nice here, based on the scenery. I mean, it's going to make a hell of a shot when I come back with the drone and better weather, because this place is stunning. It helps that Gilfach Goch seems to be on a loop as well. It's a big sort of circular place. So I'm just doing a loop and then I'm rushing off to the Rhondda Valley. Imagine living with that mountain in your back garden. Not many people in the UK can say that. Other than a duck pond and some dramatic hills, there isn't much to say about this place. Dead end in more ways than one. I actually feel like I'm starting to get used to the 20 miles per hour speed limit. The way to do it is if you feel like you're having the slightest bit of fun driving, that means you're going too fast. You're breaking the speed limit. Keep it steady, keep it boring, keep it 20. It was at this point that everything went wrong on my trip. I assume it was weariness on my behalf, but basically I forgot that there are actually two Rhondda Valleys. The Fawr and the Fach. I kept mixing them up. Then on top of that, I thought the Cynon Valley was the Rhondda Valley. So enjoy my following stupidity where I was completely unaware of the problems that were looming over me like a grey cloud. Yes, the Rhondda Valleys certainly look impressive for sure. And I think it helps that the main road goes right through the towns rather than completely bypassing them like in a lot of the other towns. Especially the Taff Valley. I mean, you can drive down that A road and you don't even notice the towns, you don't even see them. I can clearly remember my visit to this part of the valleys before. Tyler's Town and Merthyr. They're all a bit scruffy, and you've got Penrhys right by as well. But once again, the scenery is stunning here. I know I'm using that word a lot, but you run out of descriptions for the valleys when you look around. Be that good and bad. Here we are then, chilling in Merthyr again. I'm so livid. I've just realised that I made a stupid, tired mistake. I came up the wrong valley. This isn't the Rhondda Valley. It leads to the Rhondda Valley, but now it's messed up my whole route plan, and it means I'm going to have to double back down the Rhondda Valley, which is wasted time, which I didn't have. But I was in fact in one of the Rhondda Valleys. I was just being tired and dumb. My plan had been to go up the Cynon Valley, down the Rhondda Fach and up the Rhondda Fawr. I think the pressure got to me or something. So I did it in the wrong order and went up the middle valley first, which wrecked my plans. So I have now officially made it into the Rhondda Valleys. The wrong damn end, but at least we're in Ebbw, which is a really nice town. Shame I don't have much time to spend here. I'm going to get a move on, I'm not deterred. I think there's a chance we can still do this before the sun goes down. I even showed my dedication by going to Brynmawr in the Afan Valley, which is a relatively unknown valley. Now let me tell you a little thing about this place in this valley. It's just one steep dead-end road. There's literally no way out of it at all. And there's nothing up there. And it's one of the steepest hills you would have ever gone up. It goes on forever. Look at this. You go to all the hassle of getting up here, and it's just a run-down turd hanging off the back of Ebbw. This place is an embarrassment to Ebbw. It shouldn't even be associated with it. I have to admit, I had it in my head that the Rhondda Valleys was nicer than this. I think the last two towns I went through both looked absolutely shambolic. I'll have to see what the name is in post-production. I think it was Sion or something like that, but it was really boarded up. Really grim looking. It's not the sort of place you'd want to spend a Friday night, that's for sure. But we're almost there now, you know, we might actually do this. Like, we've got a chance. It's going well. We're about to complete the Rhondda Valley. We just need to make it to Treharris for the second or third time today, due to my mistake. I still haven't let that go. It wasn't Treharris I had to get to. Treharris isn't in this valley. It's Abercynon, which is next to Sirhowy, so I was basically right. Kind of. Give me some slack. I've been awake since 7 AM driving and it's now 8 PM, so that's 13 hours. Yeah, I'm knackered, but I'm still going to do it. We've still got 2 hours of sunlight. It's on. We're going to do it, whether it kills us. Well, I can tell you I drove into the night, but at the end of the day, I didn't make it. And I'm still left pondering where I went wrong. I've been agonising over this damn map that I drew, and I can only put it down to a couple of things. The mistake I made going to the wrong valley. That cost me an hour as I had to double back. I got lost a few times. That cost me some time as well. And I was about half an hour late starting. Now all these things combined, I'm not sure if I still would have made it. I still had the Ogmore Valleys and the valleys above Swansea. I've about 4 more valleys. So I would have come a lot closer, but I still don't think I would have made it. And now, I'm freezing cold, soaked, and in the middle of nowhere. My punishment for failing today's task: a miserable bed in the back of a car for a miserable human being. Despite my failure and a horrible, uncomfortable night spent in the boot of my car, I was treated to an exceptional view in the morning, which somehow still failed to cheer me up. I headed back to Pontypridd again, and the traffic was still making me tear my hair out. It was a bad start to the day. It was finally time for a new valley, the Rhondda Valley, and this one was a real mixed bag. You've got Turdtowns, which viewers of this channel will be familiar with because it isn't very good. They may also be familiar with the riots of 1910, where rioters were protesting their low wages, so Winston Churchill sent in not just the police but also army troops, which has left some ill feeling towards the man from residents of the valley to this day. Only one died during the riots, but hundreds were injured. The shop windows were all smashed in during the ruckus, and from the looks of it, all this time later they still haven't bothered to repair the town following the strikes. You continue weaving your way through the valley, through Ystrad, former home of former Premier League manager Nathan Jones and Tom Penterer, as things start improving. We reach Treorchy, and I've got a lot of things to say about it, but more on that later. Because remember when I said things would get complicated yesterday? Well, we're at one of those points right now. We're forced to turn out of the Rhondda Fach Valley and come back for the rest, as we have to complete a loop via a mountain road. And let me tell you, this road is incredible. I'd call it one of the most dramatic roads in the UK, and it truly is a marvel of engineering. It reminds you just how much the UK has regressed in its accomplishments as we struggle to build 1 mile of railway. Whilst the mountain is not a valley, you can observe 3 different valleys spanning from here. It was a real highlight of the trip, and it reminded me that we're about to enter some of those beautiful isolated valleys of Wales. So at long last, we enter the Ogmore Valley, and instantly you're just blown away by the beauty of this place. I'm not sure if it was just the sun coming down, but this place is incredible. I had to keep reminding myself I was not in the Lake District, and I had virtually the whole valley to myself. Wild foxgloves everywhere, and sheep roaming free with the backdrop of mountains and trickling streams in the background. This place was heavenly. Then you enter the main village of the valley, Ogmore Vale, and despite its surroundings, it's still just like the other valley towns. Once grand buildings are crumbling to dust, I kept asking myself how could this happen in such a beautiful spot? Wouldn't developers want a piece of this action? The average price here is only $144,000. Sure, it's more than lots of places in the valleys I've visited so far, but it's just better in so many ways. For once, the state of the main street was not enough to deter me, and I could live here for sure. It's sleepy, it's quiet, and it's tranquil. Probably a nice spot for a short break too. I will be coming back. You follow the valley down to Blackmill, and it's time to leave the incredible Ogmore Valley and start a new one, the Garw Valley. This is yet another dead-end valley, and roughly it translates as Rugged Valley. This valley has its own A-road, which you can literally follow to the end at some random farm. The main place at the head of the A-road is Pontypridd. It feels like you're miles from anywhere here. I liked it a lot here too. The scenery was once again stunning in this narrow valley, but this time more of the area's history was present, with old mines and quarries dotting the hillside. I don't think this place gets many visitors, but maybe it should one day. I'd imagine it would be a good place to raise kids and give them the outdoors lifestyle, whilst at the same time maintaining their safety. The average house price in Pontypridd is just $108,000. Sign me up.
There was hardly anybody here, possibly they were all taken away and eaten by a golden eagle which threatened the village in 2021. To the naked eye, it's similar to Gilfach Goch, but it exceeds it in every possible way. There could be a tourist boom here in the future with a nature reserve and a steam line making progress. It's back out the way we came in, be it on the opposite side of the river and down to Brynmawr on the outskirts of Bridgend. I was more familiar with the next valley, the Rhymney Valley, and it contains the town of Maesteg. It's a town with a population of 18,000, which means it's one of the largest places in the valleys. But you don't feel like you're anywhere important when you visit here. There's no shops, nothing to do, and everything is all boarded up and sad. It feels like you're in a really deprived part of the country. It's a bit like Abertillery earlier. As you can tell, this used to be something. And it did. It was a huge centre for the iron and coal industry, which used to employ a maximum of 7,000 miners. It was regarded as the best coal in Wales. But now it's not the best at anything. I'm not a fan of this valley. It's very wide and therefore not as picturesque as the others. It makes you realise just how ugly the towns and villages are here. A bit of a shock given the valleys I just travelled from. Dyffryn and Ciari follow, but these places are just the pits, and I'm not talking about the mines which used to exist here. I did see one of the longest unbroken runs of terrace houses I've ever seen. Other than that, it was all smashed up and depressing. Roads were quiet, which was a positive. We make it to Crosawu at the top of the Rhymney Valley, and I didn't think much of this one, but the houses are only 100,000, which makes it one of the cheapest places on my travels. Possibly avoid this one though, it's more picturesque to stare at a blank wall. The landscape quickly changed as I came across the hills towards our next valley. This is the Afan Valley, and let me tell you, this is the biggest mixed bag of my entire travels. First you have Cummer, which is one of the strangest places I've ever been. They must have been drunk when they designed this place because there's just roads and buildings spiring all over this tight hill. Somehow 500 people call this place home, although I'm sure half of them are on the verge of collapsing into the waiting river below. It's one of the most deprived part of the valleys, but it was about to get worse. The true start of the valley is up yet another dead-end road, and sitting at the top of this road, you'll find Glen Cwlwg, and it's the sort of place nobody would ever go. It's a narrow, steep valley with a huge forest on one side and mould-covered shacks on the opposite side. This place looks like a war zone. Bombed out buildings everywhere, corrugated metal lines the streets, wasteland here and wasteland there, and almost every building looks like it needs to be condemned. It seems like when the industry left the village, blank spaces were just left to remind residents of changing times and what they used to have. It's incredibly isolated here. It's almost a 45-minute drive to the nearest city of Swansea, so you can't even really consider this to be a commuter village. The average house price is a rip-off too at 158,000, but I do have some positives to say. Depending on which way you look at it, there is a wind farm on the hills above the village said to be one of the most successful in Wales. You've got to imagine that provides jobs too. There is also fishing lakes and ponds and a bike trail. If you're looking away from the village, it looks wonderful. Enough of that, and it was back down the same road to get into the rest of the Afan Valley, and as it turned out, it was more sparsely populated with far more trees than people. There was something eerie about its lonely beauty. As it turns out, this valley is very popular with mountain bikers. The only other touristy thing in the valley is the South Wales Mining Museum. It's £3 a pop, so at that price I'd say just go for it. Plus the staff are charming ex-miners, so you can hear about it from the horses' mouths. The location is weird though, it's not a house for miles here. Whatever, it's lovely and peaceful and quiet here. As I head down the valley, I soon regret those kind words because you reach Port Toilet. It's not great here, is it? It's as ugly as your Aunt Eileen first thing in the morning. But it's worth mentioning the strikers working at Tata Steel, where thousands of workers are desperately trying to keep their jobs with the company trying to replace them with modern methods. This is a huge employer of the town, and the strike has now been called off as talks continue. It was starting to head the same way as the valleys in the 60s and 80s. After a quick tour of this hellhole, it was back up the Afan Valley. It was time to finally complete the big circular we'd been starting hours earlier. This was another stunning drive on the edge of a cliff face, and hardly a car in sight. I took some time here to take it all in and reflect on my time in the Afan Valley. It was a hard place to really explain. The scenery was up there with some of the best, but at the same time it seemed like a desperate place to live. There was literally nothing in this valley except a couple of really deprived villages. Back up the mountain and back down the other side and we arrived back in Treorchy, and as I said, we've got some business to address here. I have a confession to make. I actually really like Treorchy, even though to the naked eye it feels like every other urinal in the valleys. But Treorchy just looks so much better maintained and it's actually nice being here. Lots of green spaces which aren't just there because a shop has been ripped down. Welsh pride on show on every corner. Less derelict than the other places, and the main street is actually large enough for 2 cars to pass at the same time. I know that last one is a bit of a minor, but trust me, I've been dealing with this all day. In 2020, the High Street won the Great British High Street Awards for having a wide choice of independent shops and a 96% occupancy rate. Whilst that win was a few years ago, it still looks great here to me. It's a real contrast to the smouldering, crumbling, in need of destroying buildings in other towns. This is a place Wales can be proud of, and for an average house price of $130,000, you aren't going to find much better for that sort of money. It might even make a great base for a holiday. You can tell residents here have pride. Sadly, we have to leave Treorchy and go through to Herbert, which isn't as nice, but the road driving was about to get dramatic again. This part of Wales is excellent. They've also got a big tourist attraction up here, zip lining, and at £20 a pop, I guess it's okay, because it's not every day you fly over a cliff. Well, that is unless you go down a random dead-end street in the valleys. We're almost done here as we headed into the Vale of Neath. The A465 Head to the Valleys road powers through the valley, skipping most of the towns and villages, so I avoided that to get a real taste of the action. And I'm glad I did that, because this valley has the nickname of Waterfall Country. Whilst I only had time for the one waterfall, it was well worth it. It was nice to have this all to myself. The rest of the valley is sparsely populated. Resolven is a village with some potential, but it's a bit run down. Whilst the valley was obviously a big part of the coal industry, it also significantly contributed into World War II efforts, as a lot of armaments factories were located here. It's not a dramatic valley by any means, but it's quiet and peaceful. Not bad at all, it's another nice place. You can follow this road down to Neath and then turn back around. It's another one of those valleys where you don't really notice that you're in a valley for most of the trip. A quarter of the way up the Neath Valley and we turn off into our second last valley. Welcome to the Dulais Valley, and it didn't take long for us to spot our first point of interest. An enormous derelict mine right next to the road. Although on closer inspection this is actually a museum. It's poorly advertised and a bit scruffy, but it is free of charge to enter and it's run by volunteers. Not something you see every day. Well, that is unless you're in the Welsh Valleys, of course. There isn't much more of note in this valley as it's small and only has a few villages. One of them being Seven Sisters, which is just a miserable place with a railway smashing through it which isn't even open to passengers. This thing dominates the whole place right through the middle, just reminding residents how unimportant they are. It's isolated, it's not spectacular, and it's possibly inbred too. It's just a bit boring. And we have yet another easy transfer to our final valley, as we can simply loop around the top of this valley and come down the final valley, the Tor Valley. Whilst this one really doesn't look like much, the town of Ystrad Gunlais is a pretty little place full of colourful buildings and a bustling high street and more Welsh pride on show. It feels like a mini Treorchy. It's not so great further down because this valley features the rundown town of Pontardawy. I wish I had more to say at this point, but I was pretty much done in. Whilst I'm aware I didn't do the Tor Valley much justice, my sanity will only stretch so far and that was it. Conveniently, this one goes down to Swansea, the M4, where I was able to head on home. As I set off home on my long journey, I had time to reflect on my travels and everything I'd seen over the 2 days. I was upset that I had failed the challenge, but day 2 had left me feeling happy overall. The eastern side of the valleys is definitely the dreariest. I don't think the weather helped, but I had visited these places before and I wasn't impressed the first time either. The 20 miles an hour speed limit is mentally exhausting, and at times you find yourself staring out of a window in a rage thinking, really? It's 20 here in the middle of nowhere on this nice wide open road, really? But I made my way through the trip without a speeding ticket, which was nice. I definitely recommend visiting the central and eastern side of the valleys as they offer the most diversity, things to do and beauty. Ogmore is now my favourite place in the UK, so if anyone wants to go halves with me on fixing up some of the old buildings here, we'll have our own little slice of heaven. But the Treorchy area and the Garw Valley were positive experiences too. I also found the Afan Valley really interesting. Despite my mixed feelings, I would genuinely come back here too. And I hope you will pay a visit to these places someday too. Welsh Valleys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.